Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first to the first of our weekend of meetings. I'd like to thank Elder Tess for being willing to share with us, to join us. Happy Sabbath to you, where it is Sabbath, where Sabbath has come in. We are going to go right into it. We have some friends from Jamaica who want to sing a short song. And when they're done, I just have a couple of housekeeping items. And then Elder Tess will commence with an opening, with a silent prayer, and get straight into the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to just patch in our friends from Jamaica. Okay, so the Enzyme Ministry brethren, can you hear me? State if you can.
Yes, sounds good.
Okay. Your line does not sound too great, but you're welcome to sing a song. People are still coming in, participants are still rolling in. So I guess if you can share your song with us, it would give us a couple of minutes to allow people to patch in while Elder Tess also gets a board work in too. Well, you know what? It appears we're experiencing some technical difficulties, which I suppose is par for the course, which is fine. We will see if we can sort out the issue with the music for subsequent presentations. But for now, I think we can go ahead. As I said, I just have a few housekeeping items for us to take note of as we go forward. We do have translation. We do have translation into Portuguese and into Spanish and also into Zulu for the South Africans. At the bottom of the Zoom interface, you would see their participants, chat, shares, polling, Q&A, interpretation. There's that interpretation box there. If you click on that, you will have a choice of a channel, a language, and an interpreter to use. For the South Africans, because Zoom only allows 8 language names, we've had to use the channel for Russian, right? So the Zulu channel is called Russian. So for the South Africans, if you want to hear the translation to Zulu, you'll have to go to the Russian channel. So that's what we have so far as translation is concerned. Let's see how it goes in this initial meeting, and any issues, feel free to communicate those, and then we will work them out as we go. I will remind all the assigned translators who are not translating this particular meeting, remember to mute your mics. And you'll notice to all the participants that on your screen there is a Q&A and a chat bar, right? There's a Q&A button and a chat button. What we want to do is we want specific doctrinal questions specific to what are being presented. We would like those to go into the Q&A, right? If you would mind, please taking note of that. We'd like those to go into the Q&A, and they, how they'll be answered, we will see. The presenter may choose to answer in the presentation, or may choose to look at them afterwards and answer them after the fact. Any other communications regarding troubleshooting or whatever other issue, you can post those to the chat. But doctrinal questions on the presentation, please put those in the Q&A. As far as housekeeping items go, I think that is it. And we're at 4:09 now. I think we can begin if Elder Tess is willing to open us off with a silent prayer, and then she can go straight into her presentation.
Elder Turbo, am I to start now?
Oh, just wait a second. It appears people cannot see your screen. Do you want to share your screen?
Share the screen? How?
There's a button at the bottom there saying share screen.
Or get out of it.
We can't see it because the chat.
Share screen?
They can see you now. So
Okay.
She doesn't need to share the screen. It's because maybe she was not talking, so people were not seeing her.
okay.
So she should stop sharing the screen if she's not sharing notes.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's. Okay, there we go. So can everyone see her?
So on the top right, there are two options. There is a speaker view and gallery view. Everybody should click on the option speaker view. That's the why maybe people are not seeing her. So if you go there, you can select speaker view. So when she starts to talk, she's gonna pop up on your screen.
You said on the top?
Yeah, on the top right, at least if you are on a computer, there is the option gallery view, or if you're seeing gallery view, it's because you are already on the right place. But if you see the option speaker view, you should click on that.
Okay. So a number of people are saying they can see her. Some are saying they can't see her. If you as Daniel has stated, there's gallery view in the top right or speaker view. If you go to speaker view, that's when you'll be able to see her. And let her, when she speaks also, she should appear on your screen.
Yeah, because you were talking, the person who is talking is gonna appear on the screen. So when she starts to talk, she will be on it.
And her video is pinned for those that are asking that in the Q&A. Her video is pinned. So when she starts speaking, you'll be able to see her. Right, so Elder Tess, if you're comfortable now, you can open the word of prayer and get started.
Can everyone hear me? We're okay? So, everyone's saying yes. That's wonderful. Wonderful. So, you can hear me. I couldn't hardly hear any of that. We're under a tin roof, and it is for Australia torrential rain. So that's why I'm sorry, Elder Tabo, that I was a little confused through that. I was having trouble hearing you because of the rain. It feels a lot more like Fiji than Australia right now. So are we all right, Elder Tabo, to begin with a prayer? I missed your introduction, that's all. This is the rain.
Okay.
You can just confirm. Okay. If you kneel with me, we'll begin with a prayer. Dear Father in heaven, thank you, Lord, for our blessing. Thank you that we can meet, Lord, from all over the world. We are still bound together. I pray, Lord, that you'll be with us in these meetings, that you will speak. Lord, I pray that you will help us as we go through this difficult time, that we'll be anchored in your truth, that we will not be shaken away. I pray, Lord, that we might, through this camp meeting, be more established, more sure of our faith, more sure of how you have led us in the past. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So I wanted to begin with some review. For those that watched the presentation in Australia last week, just our Sabbath presentations, at the beginning of that, of last Sabbath, I suggested a project for those that were willing, and that was to go back to all the lines they knew. I listed some, but I know that there were more than that. To go back to those lines and to actually place where we are. I suggested that that would make a significant difference if we were to do that, if we were able to actually place where we are on those lines. So I listed some from Acts 27 to the World Wars, but I know that there are others as well. Might not be. Can everyone still hear me?
You have to join again.
Yes, it's fine, Mum. They're saying yes. Sorry, RN. To place ourselves on those lines and know the ground that we're walking over. So I just wanted to remind us of the big line, our line, the line of the 144,000, the line of the end of modern Israel. So we're just going to start with really just a 5-minute refresher. We all know these lines well. Most of us should be somewhat familiar with these lines, but it still helps to see them in front of us as we begin. So I drew the line of the 144,000. And we have the lines of the priests, the Levites, and the Nethinim. One horrible way of saying church, two groups, world, and another group. So if we can remind ourselves of this, 144,000 plowing, early rain, latter rain, harvest. Then we come to the first group called the priests. Plowing, 1989 to 9/11. Early rain, 9/11 to 2014. Latter rain from 2014 to the end of 2019. Harvest, 2019 to 2021. So I want to do a quick quiz, spot quiz. You can write the answers in the question and answer box. Give me the waymarks to the end of ancient Israel that we would overlay with this. First of all, this waymark, 1989. This is 9/11, it's to the last. 4 BC, baptism. Baptism? I think I know what you meant. 4 BC, exactly. This waymark, 9/11 on the board. Baptism. Waymark, 2014. And ancient Israel. Where do you want to place Cana, Brother Curtis? Giving us a waymark. It's a good one to remember. You need that one. First temple cleansing. Yes, just before 2014. Change of leadership, 2014. 2019. Waymark. The cross. (2021). What's 2021, the end of ancient Israel? So we have the cross, 2019, Pentecost. Sunday law. The message goes to the Gentiles. (34 AD). End of the 490. So it finishes for the church here. Now the message will go to the Gentiles. Close of probation. The waymark for the close of probation. 70 AD. And the second advent? When did Christ come a second time? Patmos, 100 AD. So that's how we see the end of ancient Israel, lining up to the end of modern Israel. Twice to the church and then to the world. First the church, then the world. Church in two parts. Church as the priests and the Levites, church as the disciples, and then the Jews that came in under Pentecost, from Pentecost to 34 AD. Then from 34 AD, lining up with the Sunday law, then going to the Gentiles or the world. So I want us to read a quote. Found in the Desire of Ages, 121.3. Desire of Ages 121.3. In the last great conflict of the controversy with Satan, those who are loyal to God will see every earthly support cut off, because they refuse to break his law in obedience to earthly powers. They will be forbidden to vile self. It will finally be decreed that they shall be put to death. In the last great conflict of the controversy with Satan. When is the last great conflict of the controversy with Satan? When would you mark the last great conflict? I'm going to mark it as the time of trouble, as that final scene of the great controversy before Christ returns. This is the last great conflict with Satan. In this time period, in the time of the last great conflict, those who are loyal to God will see every earthly support cut off. So what's going to happen in that time period? No earthly support. Nothing beneath your feet. Because they refuse to break his law. They will be forbidden to vile self. and it will finally be decreed that they shall be put to death. So it's in that time period of the last great conflict that you find the death decree. We know that occurs in Jacob's time of trouble. So I'm going to erase this so we have more room on the board. I'm just going to take a moment and erase this board work. While I'm erasing, if you have found that quote, go to the beginning of that chapter. We're going to ask, what chapter is this in Desire of Ages? What is the context of this statement? So who's gone back to the beginning of the chapter? What chapter is it? What number chapter in Desire of Ages? Chapter 12, correct. We're in chapter 12, and what's the name of the chapter? It's called The Temptation. So where are we in Desire of Ages? She's covering the end of ancient Israel, and she's speaking about the temptation of Christ in the wilderness. So that's the context at which she talks about the last great conflict with Satan. Why is she talking about this last great conflict with Satan? Because what is Christ doing? He's in a great conflict with Satan. So she's going to compare and contrast Christ's conflict with Satan in the wilderness with the last great conflict of God's people. I'll read the first paragraph of that chapter, chapter 12 of the Desire of Ages. It's Desire of Ages 114.1. And Jesus, being full of the Holy Ghost, returned from Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. The words of Mark are still more significant. He says, immediately the Spirit driveth him into the wilderness, and he was there in the wilderness 40 days, tempted of Satan, and was with the wild beasts. And in those days he did eat nothing. So go back to ancient Israel. Where are we in that history? This is where an elder Parminda reviewed that really neatly in Portugal, how in that history we're in two different places, two different lines. We are in that period of temptation because for the end of ancient Israel, in its primary sense, as we drew it up before, This is where we locate ourselves with the end of ancient Israel. What is this waymark? The last one behind us. 2019. It's the cross. Now we go into the harvest of the first group called, the first group to the church, the disciples. The cross to Pentecost. And we are here. This is the time of trouble for the disciples. And then we're also at the end of 30 years. In the wilderness. So we're here and we're here. We're after the cross, we're after the baptism. Two different lines, two different themes. One is the theme of the first group called, the disciples. The other is the line of Christ as a priest, 30 years of training. The question is asked, how do we factor in the historical fact that Christ spent 40 days in communion with the Father and was only confronted with tests at the end of that period? Are we considering that communion part as noise? If so, why? This is an issue that we confront when dealing with any parable, is how do you actually take those details and put them into a reform line? So when you have this temptation of Christ in the wilderness, those temptations, how did they confront Jesus? Over what time period? The account is short. I don't know how long it took Satan to bring Christ to different places. But if I was generous, we could say 3 hours. So if you want to take that literally and bring that into our reform line, what issue are we going to face? Because Christ represents the movement. So we're going to have those temptations confront this movement, if we were generous, all in one day. No. Christ's time period of conflict in the wilderness, those stories become a theme. The theme of that wilderness time period is Jacob's time of trouble. It's the time of temptation and test. If you go to the line of 144,000, while they're in this time period, what happens to God's people? This is the death decree. Are they confronted with the power of Satan, with the temptations of Satan all at one point in time? No. It is the theme of that entire time period, Satan's efforts to destroy God's people. So in a parable story where you can't have that 40 days to do those three temptations become the theme of that 40 days. It becomes a symbol. So when you come to those 40 days, that entire time period is the story of temptation in the wilderness. It just happens that in that time period, Christ could be confronted with them as an individual in a matter of hours. So this entire time period is the subject of temptation in the wilderness. And we face that temptation at the same time period that we are to be in communion with the Father. If you want to see an escalation, I would suggest that you can. It does become more intense, and I might explain that later in this camp meeting. Towards the end, we may have time to go back to that temptation period. So we have an escalation, and it will come to a head. It will come to a head at this waymark, which we're fast approaching. We can see that before us. But we don't, it's not that we're oblivious. Do the disciples, do the people know the death decree is coming? Yes, you can already feel it. Are they already talking about the death decree in this time period? Yes. The 144,000 already know that the death decree is in front of them. They know what is happening. They can see the stirrings of the death decree externally. They can feel the attacks of Satan. So we already know what's happening in this movement, what the three temptations are, how they are building. It will lead to a crisis. We're already in it. But we'll come back to that another time. So we are in that wilderness time period. We're facing and watching the progression of those three temptations. We are in the history after the cross, trying to deal with the questions, the issues that we have about the cross. And it's in this context, particularly in this wilderness context, that Ellen White talks about every earthly support being cut off. So I just want to remind us one more time of what she has done here. She's taken Jacob's time of trouble. She means for the 144,000. We're taking it on the level of a fractal. She's going to overlay that. She's going to overlay that with Christ's temptation in the wilderness. Christ's temptation in the wilderness is directly our dispensation. It is not Jacob's time of trouble. So we've overlaid Christ's temptation in the wilderness with the disciples after the cross. I hope everyone can follow how we've gone through those steps. That's where we're at in those three different contexts. So we know just to remind us of that second quote we read, the beginning of that chapter 12 with the desire of ages. She says, in those days he did eat nothing. What has he got to eat? Nothing. No bread. What is bread for the movement, for God's people? Bread is a message. So Christ does not have bread in a parable sense. We do not have what? No message. So in this period, there is no message. So just to recap, we have two separate lines from the history of the end of ancient Israel. We have the disciples after the cross, the first fruit call, their time of trouble. Then we have Christ in the wilderness after he has been through 30 years as preparation to be a priest after the order of Melchizedek. We've taken those two histories and we've seen how Ellen White connects the time of trouble to Christ's period in the wilderness, which is all that we do on a fractal level. So when she says all earthly support is cut off, what I want us to consider is what that looks like for a fractal. What does it mean for us that all earthly support is cut off? Because the way that she expresses it, the way that it is taught by Adventism correctly from the quote for Jacob's time of trouble for the 144,000. She words it as they cannot buy or sell, and a decree will go forth that they will be put to death. We don't have that experience. Remember, I hope some of you also have them in front of you. If you have drawn those lines yourself, bring them to presentation, sit them in front of you. Sit in front of you the lines of the 144,000 priests, Levites, and Nethinims. So you constantly go back and can visually see what we're talking about. After 70 AD, who represents the 144,000? It's a question. 70 to 100 AD. Who's standing on Patmos to witness Christ's second advent? John, yes. So John the Revelator, writing Revelation from the island of Patmos. So between 70 and 100 AD, John represents the 144,000. Between 70 and 100 AD, was there a death decree for John? Yes. What did they do to him? They took him, they put him in oil, in boiling oil to try and kill him. He experienced an attempt on his life. A death decree was not successful. So John experienced all earthly support being cut off. He was forbidden to buy or sell. He's a prisoner. And finally, it was decreed that he would be put to death. It fits with the experience of John. Now, John, between the cross and the Pentecost, was he forbidden to buy or sell? Was it decreed that he would be put to death? No. The experience was different. So this is what we understand about a fractal. In that time period, there was not a death decree for the disciples. At the same time, was every earthly support cut off? I would suggest yes, but it looks different in a fractal. So we understand for our experience now, it's the same thing. It looks different, but we still have that experience of every earthly support being cut off. At the same time, that there is no bread, no message. So remember the context of the Desire of Ages. When was it written? 1898. So if it's written in 1898, it is in the context of the Great Controversy time period. It's in that history, it's between the writing of the 1888 version and the 1911 version that the Desire of Ages is written. So she's writing this with the viewpoint of what history? When she's writing about a Sunday law. So it's that sequence of events. The Desire of Ages connects to that, where you would expect to have a Sunday law. And then because you refuse to keep Sunday and dishonor Sabbath, you would have these escalating persecutions, finally culminating in Jacob's time of trouble, when they would be forbidden to buy or sell, when those keeping the true Sabbath would face a death decree. So I just wanted to remind us of what context Desire of Ages was written. And that fits with John's experience between 70 and 100 AD. So I want us to go through now Ellen White's dream, a dream that Ellen White had. And we're going to read the version that you find in the Review and Herald. So I'll put up on the board the reference for this. It's Review and Herald, January 12, 1869. Review and Herald, January 12, 1869, paragraph 1. The question before we move on, we have two concurrent themes on that line. So what our friend is doing is asking about the line of Christ in the wilderness, saying, do we have two themes for that history that occurs between baptism and the first temple cleansing, particularly that wilderness time period? Communion with the Father, which is preparation, and the temptations. I would agree with the insinuation made at the beginning. There's two concurrent themes. There's the temptation, there's also to be this communion with the Father, preparation for his work, the work of reflection. So the first point made. To understand the time period that we're in, we need to take every single aspect of it. That is why I ask people to go back and write where they are on all of those lines. What happened just after October 22, 1844? What happened after 1861? What happened after the cross? What happened after the baptism? What happened after Raphia? What happened after Paul sees the angel in Acts 27? So we need every one of those lines combined creates a complete picture of our experience. And that is what I want us to have in our mind at this camp meeting. We're going to read this whole portion, this whole section from the Review and Herald of Ellen White's dream. She says, while at Battle Creek, about 5 months since, I dreamt of being with a large body of people. So while at Battle Creek, about 5 months since, 5 months before. So when did she have this dream? She's writing about it in January 12, 1869. She's had the dream 5 months before January 1869. So approximately when is that? It's around August 1868. So why does August 1868 become interesting for us? August 1868. Why did we discuss August 1868 last year and 2018? What happens in 1868 externally? Revision. Who was president? It was Andrew Johnson. And in 1868, what did they try and do to him? He favors the South. He favors slavery. And in 1868, they try to impeach him. They do impeach him. Impeachment does not mean removal from office. He was impeached by the House. It was a 151 to 2019, where we said back in 2018, due to that 151, you have a president, Donald Trump. He favors the South. He favors slavery or inequality, nationalism in its application, and they would try and impeach him. So that was Trump. Impeached by the House in 2019, as expected. So 1868 takes us to which of our waymarks? It takes us to our close of probation. I just wanted us to note she had this dream mid-1868. 5 months prior to this being written. She dreams she's with a large body of people. A portion of this assembly started out prepared to journey. We had heavily loaded wagons. So she sees a large body of people. Now she's going to begin a journey. Does all of that large body of people take part in this journey? No, only a portion. So take me somewhere in the Bible. Just chapter. Where do you see that? You have a large portion, a large body and then a portion. So a question was asked while people are thinking. Could it be the other witness to the erroneous prophecy of Nashville that the absence of bread in the wilderness for Christ after his baptism, 30 years of the movement after 2019, that we have no prophecy such message? If I can rephrase this, is this another witness that we do not, that prophecy of Nashville is incorrect? That we can see that after the wilderness, there is no message in that time period. Now, I have never seen those who have come up with and believe this prophecy ever refute their acceptance of that 30 years being a training for the priest. Last I've heard, they still accepted that, but they no longer teach those lines. They no longer are guided by those lines. So I think I want us to keep that in our minds, whether or not they're still using these lines. For us, it's obvious. It's not just that they don't have a message. It's not that there can't be a prophecy about Nashville. It also has implications within this movement. If people are coming into in this time period after baptism and saying, we have a study, we have a message that's an increase of knowledge, that's life and death, that God's people have to accept, and drawing out disciples after them, what do you know that message is? It's fanaticism. You can see that on other lines, but there is no message in that time period. It doesn't mean that there aren't other studies being done, revision of what's come before, an opening up of verses, of passages, but there is not an increase of knowledge of any type of testing message in that dispensation, in that time period of that dispensation. It does come. What does Christ receive after he faces battles and has victory over those temptations? Then he receives the bread, but it comes after he defeats battles against those temptations. So yes, there can be no message over Nashville if we believe the lines, either the line that shows us we're after the cross or the line that shows us we're after the baptism. So coming back to our dream, mid-1868, Ellen White dreams that there's a large body of people. A portion of this assembly start out prepared to journey. So I would take us to Daniel chapter 2. You have a mountain. Not all of that mountain is going to go on a journey. Not all of that mountain is going to take down that image. It's not going to do the work of stoning. Instead, a portion is going to be cut out of that mountain to go on a journey to do a work. So the chapter, you may have others. The chapter I was thinking of was Daniel chapter 2. There's a large body of people. This is Adventism. A portion of that large body starts out prepared to journey. Not everyone comes with. We had heavily loaded wagons. As we journeyed, the road seemed to ascend. On one side of this road was a deep precipice. On the other side was a high, white, smooth wall, like the hard finish upon plastered rooms. So you have a portion begin. When they begin, they have these heavily loaded wagons. They're going to take all of their stuff, all of their things on these wagons drawn by horses. They're going up this pathway. On one side, you have this solid, smooth, white wall, a high white wall. On the other side, a deep precipice. So they're journeying between the wall and the precipice. As we journeyed on, the road grew narrower and steeper. Some places in the road seemed very narrow, so much so that we concluded that we could travel no longer with the loaded wagons. We then loosed them from the horses. So they're going to take these wagons, they're going to cut off the wagons from the horses. They're going to take a portion of the luggage from the wagons and place it upon the horses. So they've started out with all of this stuff. It's on wagons drawn by horses. They're going to lose the wagons. So we'll stop now. I want to keep to time as best as I can. So we were to stop at this point in time, and we'll come back after a 15-minute break and continue the story of her dream. If you'll kneel with me, we'll close. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for our blessings. Thank you for the rain, Lord. Thank you for all that you give us. I pray, Lord, that you will help us to understand what is being taught. May those who are confused, I pray, have the confidence to speak up, to ask questions, that we might be in unity and have assurance of where we are. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So I've kept the time. We'll have a 15-minute break, and I'll pass over to Elder Tabo and then come back.
Okay, so we'll close the line for 15 minutes, and we'll resume at the stated time.